This is the Podcast Engineering Show, session number 12. Maybe I can play drums along with these guys. Oh! That's right, on another podcast, I actually played my drums. I did like a drum beat. It was pretty cool. Welcome to the show, everyone, the Podcast Engineering Show. I am Chris Curran. I produce podcasts for Dun & Bradstreet, Forbes, as well as select business authors and companies. Every week on this show, we bring you, because I have awesome guests. We bring you podcast production tips and tricks and techniques, and we get down and dirty talking shop with podcast producers, engineers, and other specialists. I have a background in audio engineering, and that's one of the things I noticed when I entered podcasting about 4 years ago was the huge lack of audio skills in podcasting. You know, it's very easy to start podcasting. You just get a mic, plug it in, and record and upload it, but does it sound good? That's the question. Anyway, that's where this show comes in handy for a lot of people who maybe don't have the audio engineering background. Maybe you never went to school for audio engineering. Maybe you never spent a lot of time in New York City working on records like me. So that's why this show, I'm here to help you. We're going to sort of pull back the curtain on audio engineering and give you the inside view. And we've had a lot of great guests. And if you implement the best of what you learn here, think about this. Your podcasts and your engineering and production will sound a lot better, and you'll spend less time producing them, of course. And, of course, Barry's here with me. Barry, you ready for today?
Yeah, oh yeah.
He's ready. He's always ready. Barry, do you always say, yeah, oh yeah?
No way. You crazy?
All right. Yeah, not always, but most of the time. Anyway, this show is brought to you by two of my ventures. One is Podcast Engineering School. Podcast Engineering School. That's right. I'm developing a course, should be ready by the fall of this year, to train individuals and prepare them for a career as a podcast engineer or producer. You can train you for a career, but also, if you want to start your own business, doing it as well. I can prepare you because that's what I do. And that's the other company that supports the show, Fractal Recording. That's my production company, podcast production company, providing podcast production of the highest quality. And really the highest, I don't want to say the highest quality, but you know what I mean. Fractal Recording, fractalrecording.com. You can listen to this show on iTunes, Stitcher, and TuneIn Radio. And the website, podcastengineeringschool.com. That's right. This podcast lives on the website for the school. So today we have Carey Green with us. This is the day that Carey Green graces our show. We're so happy. He's the founder of Podcast Fast Track. He's the host of Podcastification. That's a cool podcast with short episodes, right, Carey?
Yeah, fairly short. Yeah, I don't play any drums, though. I mean, I do play drums, but not on the show.
Are you really a drummer?
I am a drummer. I've been drumming since I was probably 12 years old.
Awesome. Well, when we get into it, I'm going to tell you my wife and I want to take a ride out to Mount Elbert here in Colorado, and I know you live out that way, so maybe we have to jam. I don't know.
Yeah, that'd be fun. I could get us access to a drum set, that's for sure.
Should we do two drum sets side by side, like the presidents of the United States of America? Remember that?
Yeah, like those old videos with Steve Gadd and David Garibaldi and all those guys. That'd be a lot of fun.
So you also have made an Audacity course, and with a lot of videos. So you definitely are an Audacity expert in terms of podcasting, so we're going to talk about that a little bit too. But Carey, welcome to the Podcast Engineering Show.
Thanks, Chris. It is great to be here.
I know, and you live in Colorado, and so do I. That's why I made the reference that when we drive out to Mount Elbert, we can meet up for coffee or something, or drumming. So this show is pretty simple. We start with the speed round. Let's get into it. Now there's only 2 questions in the speed round for all you paying attention. That includes me. I have to remind myself. I have notes here. First, we want to know what shows you produce and engineer yourself, meaning you take it from recording to editing to publishing and everything. Which shows do you produce?
Yeah, right now, Podcastification is the only show that I'm putting out. I'm working on a second show that will be kind of a faith-based business kind of a show that, I haven't launched the website. I haven't launched anything yet, but I've got all in my head and on paper, and I'm working to get some of the kinks worked out. So you know how that goes. Yeah, preparation. That's where it is. That's where the quality time is spent. So Podcastification, what's the show about? The show is about podcasting, about how to do it better, how to improve your game, how to start, how to finish. I talk about industry happenings, things that are showing up, like new software and recording options and those kinds of things. And like you said, most episodes are very short. I try to keep it under 20 minutes. Even my guest interviews, I've been, for the most part, able to keep it down that low just because I know the average commute is 20 to 30 minutes, and I like to make it where you can hear an entire episode during that time.
Yeah, so you cover probably all aspects of podcasting. That's different from this show where we really focus on equipment and workflow too. What's the website for Podcastification?
You can find it at podcastfasttrack.com/podcastification.
Right, Podcast Fast Track. That's your company, and you offer different podcast services too. So if you're listening, go check that out. All right, that's number one of the speed round. Number two is let's go through your workflow and your hardware. And this is just the brief overview, the 1 minute quick tour. So when you're ready to record an episode and you have all your content prep. We're not going to talk about content prep and everything. But once you're ready to record and you enter your studio, take me through the process of setup, recording, and then editing all the way to publishing. But just the quick overview first.
Sure. Well, I have a template set up in Audacity already that includes my intro and outro music and any sound effects that I'm likely to use. So I will go into my Audacity project there and we'll hit the mute button on all of those sorts of resources that are already in the template and just start talking about the episode. If I have a guest on, I've already recorded that usually using Zencaster or Ringer. One of those two is usually what I use. And I just pull in those audio pieces and do the editing front to back once I've finished recording. And my editing usually is for the sake of comprehension and quality rather than any set criteria of what I'm looking to edit out. I just want it to sound good and I want it to be as comprehensible as possible. So once I've done all that, I place my elements, whether it's intro, outro, sound effects, those kinds of things, do any clips I need to do in order to insert those in the right places, and then produce it. And then the final step is I run everything through Auphonic. For my company, I have a subscription to Auphonic, which is a great post-processing piece of software that's out there. And there is a free version if people are interested in that enables you to do a certain amount of audio in terms of minutes per month. So you might check that out at auphonic.com.
Right? Yeah, we just talked about that last episode with Dave Jackson, a little bit, Auphonic. So before we get into your, I really want to go through all your equipment, literally step by step, microphone, preamp, everything, mixing board, whatever you have. But before that, what's your background in audio? Obviously you're a drummer, so were you into like recording your drums and that's sort of what led you to podcasting?
No, my drumming was just in school and in various bands that I was in as a kid and a college student. But my audio background, when I was about, I'm guessing here, 16 years old, I lived in a small town in the panhandle of Texas, and I actually landed a job at a local radio station doing DJ stuff. And that was back in the day when you had to splice things with a razor blade and put together reel-to-reel tape and that kind of stuff. So I basically got to babysit the board and an automated system that they had during the overnight shift, and then in time moved into doing some editing and on-air work as well. So that background in radio enabled me about 4 years ago when I got into the online space to jump into the digital realm of audio real quickly because I had a basic understanding and the tools were pretty intuitive. So I jumped into Audacity right away because it was a free program, and I've just never found a need to go beyond that because it's a great tool. It does some powerful things, and coupled with Auphonic, I'm able to get the best quality audio that I think is possible.
Right? Yeah, well, I want to talk about Audacity and the video, not the videos themselves, but just a little bit about Audacity. Maybe even as we go, we can throw some stuff in about Audacity. But let's go through your workflow in a little more detail here. So let's talk about, when you're getting ready to record. Do you have a studio in your house?
I have a small studio that I've built, yeah, and that's where my office is as well. And when I say small, I mean small. It's probably 5 foot by 8 foot. I mean, tiny little room. And I've got, the eggshell type foam on the walls and on the background. If you can see behind me, I've got coffee bags hanging.
Nice.
One of my kids both work at the local coffee shop and bring these bags home, and they make for good sound dampening. So I like it.
Oh, that's cool.
As far as my equipment goes, I use a Dell Precision laptop. It's about done. I've got to get a new computer here real soon.
Oh, okay.
I'm using an AT 2005 microphone, plugs USB right into the computer itself, and then I record straight into Audacity. I have also got a Tascam digital recorder that I use periodically, but that's mainly when I'm away from my studio. I'll use that, and I'll take my AT mic with me. And then I also have a lavalier mic, and it's an AT as well, that I use periodically when I'm off location and when I'm doing videos. A lot of time I'll use that. And my new podcast is going to be video and audio, so I'll be using that primarily.
Nice. And of course, AT is Audio Technica.
Exactly.
If you're not sure, listener. So the microphone is an AT 2005. Is that like the previous one to the AT 2100, which is wildly popular?
Yeah, I believe it is, and it's still available, and I think it's about $15 to $20 more expensive than the AT 2100. And I have both mics, and I don't see a difference really. It's just that I've been using this one and I'm very happy with it, so I haven't switched them out.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so do you have your AT 2005 mic? You have it on a boom arm or a stand with a pop filter or anything?
Yeah, it is a boom arm. I've got both a typical microphone foam cover over the end of the mic and a pop filter that I use because I tend to do some P's and S's that are pretty harsh sometimes.
You pop it pretty well?
I can, yeah. And I do have a boom stand as well that I use. I don't know the model. It was at the time just the cheapest one I could find on Amazon, and it actually works really well.
Right. So all right. So you're going with your mic right into the computer and right into Audacity. Now, here's a question for you because I know even some of my clients who record locally into Audacity. I'm thinking of one client who I think they use some sort of a Sennheiser headset mic through an iRig, and then they come out of that into their computer. And there's really not it's not enough level, so the Audacity recording ends up being pretty low. I know in Audacity there's a slider for the record level, but usually it's all the way up. Is there any way to get more level within Audacity?
You know, what you just described, it sounds to me like they've got so many pieces of hardware in there, they're losing some of their signal because going with USB straight into my computer, I have no problem with levels. My levels come out just right.
I think it's the iRig. I mean, I don't think that's a professional piece of gear, and he has the mic preamp on the iRig turned up all the way, and it's just, I mean, any mic pre turned up all the way, it either should distort like hell or it should be loud enough. So.
Yeah, it should totally be loud enough. So there's something in his setup that's not right there. I mean, that sounds like the clients that I receive their audio and they've recorded directly into Audacity somehow like that. And I wind up having to either compress or level that file to get the levels up because it's just an issue.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Way too low. So, but in Audacity, there's only, you can turn the input recording level slider all the way up, but you can't boost the gain anymore in Audacity.
Well, there is a gain setting or a trim setting, so to speak, but I recommend nobody messes with that because it basically takes you above 0 dB on your input volume, which is going to distort really quickly if you're not careful. So okay. I always recommend people just leave that alone at 0. So in my client's case, though, would you recommend just bumping that up a hair, see what happens? Maybe play with it a little bit and see what you get, but you'll have to listen to your final output very carefully to see if you're getting any kind of distortion. It's not always visible on the waveform, but you can hear it before you see it a lot of times. Right. So I should use my ear. That's what you're saying? Yeah, imagine that. Yeah, go figure. All right. So that's a good I like that. I'll see if that helps. But luckily for him, it's a clean signal, and I can sort of boost it, and it's still good, and there's not much noise. So, all right. So you're recording into Audacity. What resolution do you record at? Resolution? You're talking about bitrate and that kind of stuff? Yeah, 16, 44.1. Yeah, it's 44.1 is what I'm going into, and it. Well, here's a question about Audacity, because I have a lot of clients that use it. They just open it up and record. Do you actually set the resolution, or does it just record it at the highest resolution, and then when you export, you choose your resolution? Yeah, I think it depends on what your defaults are set up as at the beginning. When I first opened Audacity, I don't remember ever changing these settings. So it's set at stereo 44.1 and a 32-bit float. So 32-bit float, which is yeah, that's very high for the bit rate. Yeah, and you can adjust that to 24 or 16 if you want to inside of Audacity. Got it. Yeah.
Okay, so you record there, and then you have I like that you have a template. You have all your stuff kind of preloaded in there.
Yeah, I mean, short of doing what you're doing, where you've got a mixer board with all the sound effects, and you can hit the cart whenever you want and play those. Short of what you're doing, the next best thing in Audacity is to just have them preloaded, so that you just leave them muted until you're ready to start your edits, and then you just drag them to where you want them and unmute them, and there you go. You've got those sound effects where you want them. You just didn't do it all live.
Exactly. That's a great way to do it. And and then it's like the whole project file has everything in it, so that when you're done recording, you can just assemble everything and slide it together and make sure all the transitions are good.
Yeah, templates are huge time savers. I mean, imagine if you had to import every one of those sound effects or intro and outro every time you need them. Man, just save a template, for goodness sake.
Yeah, especially fades, too. Like the intro and outro, the music fades and everything. You can actually save the fade. Obviously, the fades are saved.
You can preset that. You can preset that fade, and it's the same length of time every time. And you just get used to it, and you learn to say your intro and outro in the same relative amount of time every time, and it comes out great.
I'm using Reaper as my DAW right now, and I just figured out how to select more than one envelope point. So for when you're fading with the automation line, and you put in the little points, and then you can drag the points, and when you fade it out in the the automation,
sure.
I figured out how to select more than one point at a time. So like if let's say my fade on the music has 5 different envelope points, but the music played for 30 seconds and then faded out because let's say the intro to the podcast was 30 seconds. Well, next podcast, what if the intro is 60 seconds? So now what I do is I grab those 5 envelope points of the fade and I just drag it to the right out to 60 seconds. So now now the music will play for 60 seconds and then fade. It's the same fade, but it's just further out. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
How to do that.
Yeah, I don't know if that's even possible in Audacity. I'll have to play around with it and see.
Right? Yeah. All right. So then you have it recorded, and then you start sliding stuff around. As far as editing, let's talk about your philosophy on editing. I know you said you just want to make it sound good and intelligible for the listener, but do you do a lot of editing?
I don't really know how to quantify a lot. I do what sounds good. When I'm working with clients, I get a general template from them at first that tells me the kind of edits they're looking to take out, whether it's mouth noises or big pregnant pauses or restatements or stutters and stammers like I'm doing right now. Those people usually have a pretty good idea of what they want. If they've got the money and the budget to pay me, they usually have a pretty good idea of what they're looking for. And so I have a basic template that I go by. But then beyond that, my team and myself are all real mindful of what makes a good conversation and what makes for intelligible audio. And so we try to work toward comprehension. So if someone is stuttering and stammering and they restate themselves 4 times before they actually get to the meat of what they're trying to say, if we have the client's permission, we'll go through and we'll edit out most of those stutters and stammers so that the question goes straight into a very clear and cogent answer, so that you're getting a succinct conversation that is sounding very natural, but it's not all choppy, where you don't have where you can obviously tell it's been edited. If you can tell our show's been edited, then we didn't do a good job.
Right. And you use the same philosophy for podcastification?
Yeah, podcastification, I'm a little bit more loose on it because I like the real relaxed feel and the stammering and stuttering to a degree. There's things that I cut out from episode to episode that I might have left in the one before that for some reason in this one it sounds okay to me. And it's my show, so I have my own preferences and my own feeling of how I want the show to be, and I'm okay leaving it that way.
Right, okay. And how do you monitor what you're hearing? Do you just wear headphones or do you have speakers?
I usually will use headphones when I edit, and then when I go back and do my once-over to make sure I didn't miss anything, I'll take the headphones out so I can hear it through speakers as well. I try to keep in mind that people are going to be listening in a variety of ways, some straight from their smartphone, some through headphones, some through an earbud, some through speaker in their car. So, I want to make sure that it's maximized as well as possible for all of those possibilities. And it's not always possible because those different ways of producing audio have different levels of quality. So it may sound better on headphones than it does through the speaker of your car. But if I've tried to keep that in mind, the speaker of the car in mind, as I'm doing the edits and the post-production, then it usually comes out balanced pretty well in all cases.
Okay, good. Now, before we leave the topic of editing, what in Audacity is really good for editing? Are there any special, commands or tools in Audacity that really help with editing?
Man, the smartest thing is to learn how to use the keyboard shortcuts. I mean, if you have to use your mouse to go up and hit a little key or a drop-down menu every single time you need to do a function, you're going to take forever to edit. So you either need to learn the keyboard shortcuts that are in there for cut and dividing and pasting and those kinds of things, or create your own. Audacity has a great way. I think it's in the edit menu down at the preferences section. You can create your own shortcuts. And so you just decide what keys you're going to use or combination of keys to do certain functions. And you can even do that on effects, so like compression and leveling and fading in and out and those kinds of things. And it saves so much time. I mean, it's incredible. So, I see people all the time messing with Audacity and using their mouse for every single thing, and you're just prolonging the agony of the time cycle of podcasting when you do that. If you take the time, and it does take time at first to learn and create shortcuts, man, it'll save you so much time in the long run. It's kind of like who is it? Rory Vaden's got this thing, Procrastinate on Purpose, and his whole gist of the thing is do the things now that are going to save you the most time later, and keyboard shortcuts is one of those things.
Right. Yeah, I know in Reaper I figured out a few shortcuts, but there are some things that I need to sort of program in, and I just haven't gotten around to it. But
wow, do it, man. Take an hour and do it. It'll save you so much time in the future.
Yeah, especially with you know what it is? It's with little... So when people are not speaking, because usually I have everybody on their own track, so when someone's not speaking, if they don't make a lot of noise, I'll just leave it in, and I mean... The space between speaking I'll leave in if there's not much noise, but some people make noise and they're sipping a drink and they're shuffling papers, so you got to go in and cut it out. And of course I don't want to cut it out, just cut from A to B and cut it out. So as the clip is ending, as the clip going into the space is ending, I'll actually fade that out gently. Yeah. So it fades into nothing gently, so it doesn't catch the listener off guard. And then same thing coming out of it, it'll fade in gently, and then they'll start talking. Those fades on those little small clips, I actually have to, right-click, go into properties, and then I put like 999 milliseconds into the field for the fade out or fade in, which it's not 999 milliseconds, but it just means fade the whole clip. And then I hit save, and it's done. So it's not nasty, but that's one that I got to automate for sure with a shortcut.
Yeah. I don't know Reaper at all, but I know in Audacity you can like highlight the section you want to fade, even in terms of the length of the fade, and then just use your shortcut key to hit the fade function, and it'll apply the fade over that distance that you've highlighted.
Right. All right, now let's get into mastering. So let's, you have your Audacity project, you've aligned everything, and you kind of, mix it down. How do you process or treat the audio? But besides Auphonic, do you do anything else in Audacity?
It always depends on a clip-by-clip basis. If we get clients who send us audio that's really low, we'll probably either compress or level or even do some what do you call it? I don't use it very often. Loudness, we'll increase the loudness.
Oh, right.
Before we even start edits, because it just makes it easier to hear the things you need to edit. But that's, like I said, on a case-by-case basis. There's sometimes we will compress just looking at the waveform, say it's a conversation, and you see one person's waveform is really large and the other one isn't. We may do some compression on the one that isn't in order to get them more level from the beginning. But typically, most of the things that we need and that our clients need are handled through Auphonic. And it's just a great last step to make sure everything that's being done is being done kind of on an even-handed level across the entire mixed track.
Yeah, because I assume the audio you get is a conversation. It's two voices on either one track or stereo track, whatever. And then you have to sort of process them together. So that's what Auphonic does really well. It actually, cuts down the background noise. If there's any hums, it'll, or 60 cycle hums or anything like that, it'll get rid of that, and it'll actually level out the two different speakers as well. So Auphonic really does everything. Within Audacity, if someone sends you a file that's very low level, do you ever use noise reduction within Audacity, or you just bump the level up?
No, sometimes we will use noise reduction, especially if there's a background hiss or some sort of like street noise, things like that in the background. We will often catch that in editing as we're listening and realize, what is that? And we'll stop and listen real carefully. And you can apply some gentle noise reduction to those sections, and it'll apply across the whole track. And the noise reduction in Audacity, honestly, is a little temperamental, so you have to be real careful with how you set those levels. And we just learned over time how much is too much and how much is not enough. So it just takes experimentation and even experimentation on each individual track that you receive. So there's not a set of settings I can give Audacity users and say this will work on everything, because it just doesn't work that way.
Right. All right, so talk to me about plugins in Audacity in general. So I know Audacity probably comes with certain stock plugins, and I'm assuming that they're not that great. Is that true?
No, there's quite a few that are very powerful.
Okay.
And the compression that we use, typically, there's two different compressors that it comes with, and both of them are actually pretty decent. We have our favorite. There's one that is called Dyson compressor I used to use all the time, and I've actually switched from it back to the stock Audacity compressor just because I like the variables that you have available on that. There are a lot of, I don't know what you'd call it, third-party plugins, I guess, that you can add into Audacity, and it's different for Mac and PC, and even Linux, it's different. So you won't have the same plugins available on one operating system that you have on the other.
Oh, wow.
In those third-party ranges, just because the person who created it doesn't use that operating system, so they don't really know how to create that plugin for that system. So, but there's one in particular that we use not very often, but fairly often. It's called Digital Spitfish. It's kind of a funny name. My understanding is that they are no longer supporting it, so you use at your own risk. But there is still a user guide and things like that. And the thing that we use in Digital Spitfish the most is they have a de-esser function that is just really great. If someone didn't have a pop filter or whatever and has lots of harsh S's, you can use their de-esser function and go through, and it'll mellow those out quite considerably without really distorting the track. So it's a really cool plugin that we use, fairly often.
Right, a de-esser is one of those things you gotta have in your back pocket. You might not use it a lot, but man, the time that you need it, you need to have it at the ready.
Oh yeah, when you need it, you need it.
And there's certain people too who just I know two people. I'm not going to say who they are. It doesn't matter. I mean, it's not like it's a secret or anything. But there's two people I know who pretty much any mic they're on, their S's will be pretty harsh.
Yeah,
it's just the way their voices, the way their tongue and their mouth makes the noises, I guess. I don't know. But
yeah, I think sometimes it's that. I think also sometimes it's just bad mic technique. They get too close to the mic or they speak directly into it instead of across it. And so it just makes more opportunity for those kind of harsh sounds.
Right? That's so funny because sometimes I told the one woman, I said, look, if you ever do a podcast show, let me know because I will instruct you what mic to get and what preamp and channel strip to get because it needs to have a de-esser. She's like, what's a de-esser? And then I told her what a de-esser was and she didn't care. I mean,
yeah.
It's like,
I think most people who have those little quirks in the way they speak know that they have those little quirks. So it's usually not offensive.
Right. So then you put it in Auphonic and let's talk about loudness level. Do you do it at the -16 LUFS?
Yep, that's exactly what we do. In my view, that's what's going to become the standard that may even be regulated by the communications powers that be in time. So yeah, I'm just going there. I'm sticking everything with that. I have one client who hates it. He just hates that. He'll refer to people like John Lee Dumas and Pat Flynn, and he'll say, well, they have their loudness levels higher, and he'll pull a track into his recording solution and look at their levels, and he'll say, I want to do what they're doing. And I don't know what their levels are, but they may be higher, and that's fine. But I'm just trying to go with what's going to be industry standard because I think we're going to be forced to go there eventually anyway.
Yeah, but -16 is loud enough. That's loud.
I think so. I mean, this particular client, I think his audio is hot. It's just really hot. And at times, if you say you've got your volume at a certain level because that's what you normally listen at, and then you put on his episode, man, you got to turn down really quick.
Oh, see, that's annoying.
Yeah, and you only have to do it at the beginning of his episode, and then the rest of the episode's fine because it's all the same loudness. But still, the loudness from one show to another, I think, is the point of having a standard noise level. And that's why I think pretty soon the Federal Communications Commission is going to get involved, and it's going to be standardized even for podcasts.
One thing I have not tried with Auphonic is music, meaning a full episode. I always use it for just the conversation part of it. So what I'll do is if there's a conversation between 2 or 3 people with one microphone, I'll throw it into Auphonic to get rid of, the room noise and sort of level everybody out. Then I'll bring that back into my DAW and in my DAW I have the music, I have this, I have the intro and everything. But I've never taken a whole track with the intro music and everything and put it into Auphonic. Does it mess with music in a certain way? Does it do anything?
That's exactly what we do. We have our intro and outro and everything mixed into a final track, and then we take the whole thing into Auphonic, and it handles it really well. It doesn't change the music levels very much if they're recorded to standard, but that part where it fades into the voice and everything, it'll level that really well. And I really like it. There's also a function within Auphonic that most people don't know about, but you can actually set a template for a particular show and upload the intro and outro files into Auphonic as standard intro and outro files. And then it'll insert whatever you add to that template per episode between those two things. Now, the problem is that in order to do that, say your intro is 40 seconds long, you have to have 40 seconds worth of silence on the track that you enter into that particular project for that episode. Yeah, so that it knows where to begin that audio that you just put in. So that precludes you doing any fades or anything like that because you can't do voiceover type effects natively in Auphonic. You have to do all that in your DAW.
Right. That's a little weird to me. I mean, I wouldn't do that, but
I think I don't use it, and I think it's just the technology. The guys on Auphonic haven't caught up to the needs yet,
right?
And so they don't have that function. But from what I hear, they're working on it.
Right. And yeah, and it's not like a stupid function or a feature. It's just that for some people it is exactly what they need. Of course, that's why they created it. I think guys like you and me, though, for sure, we're on top of that on our own. We don't need that feature, maybe.
Yeah, it's easy enough to do on your own. To add another step of creating 30 seconds of silence at the beginning of my track is just a headache I don't need,
Right. So what else do you do to correct bad sounding audio?
It's a case-by-case basis, depends what it is. There's a lot of times I get people contacting me and say, hey, I don't need to set up a monthly subscription, but I do have this one piece of audio. Like for example, I had a guy recently contact me who had recorded something at Madison Square Garden, and it was a conversation with some big name in his industry. And it was just this prized possession of a recording, and he wanted me to clean it up. And when I got it into my program and started listening to it, the background noise was so overwhelming just from the crowd noise or whatever it was that was going on in the room, that there was no way I could separate out the voice of the person he was interviewing clearly enough to make it even intelligible, much less the predominant sound that you hear in the recording. So, there's a case-by-case basis, and that old saying, garbage in, garbage out, is exactly true. If you get a bad recording, chances are it's a bad recording, and post-production is not going to help.
What do you do if – oh, sorry, go ahead, continue.
I was just going to say, so that's just one example. You receive all kinds of things. Sometimes it's noise reduction. Sometimes it's cutting out background noise in a separate track. For example, you were talking about, the fades you use when there's background noise and things like that. If I have 2 tracks and they both have kind of an equivalent amount of room noise or white noise, you might call it, I sometimes will silence the white noise in one track when that speaker is not speaking, just to not have to do fades like that. And the white noise in the other track kind of compensates and covers up the fact that I silenced it altogether in the other track.
Right.
Now, your 2 tracks have to be exactly perfect for that to happen. And it, happens more often than you would think, but it doesn't work on every track because, some of them, the guy on one track has no room noise. And so if you do that, it's obvious that a silence was put in there, and we don't want that.
Right. That's so tricky. You got to always be aware of that. What happens when you get a conversation, a piece of audio, where one person sounds fine, the other person, their volume's lower, and maybe it's through Skype and it's nasty? Like, what if the voices are really different? Do you do anything special with that?
Usually it comes down to compression and leveling on the one that's bad and potentially removing noise on that one as well. It's just tricky. I mean, that's why audio editing on a professional level is not something that's easily taught and is definitely not taught quickly, because you've got to develop an ear for these kinds of things, and you've got to know your program well enough to know what effects will apply what you're looking for to the situation you've been presented with. So, I understand your question, but it's hard to answer because it's a case-by-case thing.
Yeah, and especially if they're mixed together into one track.
Oh, yeah. If you get them in one track, you're just stuck with what you have, and you have to do the best you can. I mean, There's times where you can it's really an asinine way to do it, but you can go in and zoom way in and find where speaker number 2, who's the bad volume speaker, begins speaking and ends speaking, and you can highlight all that and compress just that. And sometimes that'll work, but often it's obvious that something was done at that point in the recording. So it doesn't always work. And even if you do your compression at really low levels, it may help a little and may not be so obvious, but it doesn't always help in a way that's beneficial to spend all that time.
I know. I've done that a few times, actually, with a podcast show that I was sort of consulting on. They were getting their studio up and running, and they started, recording some stuff, and some of the levels were not that great, and I got basically a stereo track. So I did exactly what you said. I highlighted the lower volume person, and then I raised that volume up. But the problem is if there's both voices are talking over each other going into that, you can definitely tell that, something happened, something raised up. But in the end, it's probably better that way because at least the volume's higher. At least the listener can hear it.
Yeah.
I mean, so it is tricky. It's really tricky. So any other advice as we're kind of circling the field here for a landing? Any other tricks or anything with Audacity you want to share? One last little thing maybe you can tell us about?
Audacity, I hear both sides of the coin on this. I hear people say, I never could figure out Audacity. And then I hear other people say, it's really intuitive and I figured it out really easily. And I don't know that there's one that's true and one that's not true. It's just a matter of how people view the program and approach the program and even their level of experience with similar programs. And so I guess my only thing would be is if Audacity seems intimidating to you at first, or you feel like it's just not something you can figure out, man, there's all kinds of free resources out there. I've got a YouTube channel called Free Audacity Tutorials. You can go in there. I think I've got 20-some tutorials that show you basics and some little effects you can use and things like that. And just having someone walk through it with you will help you to get enough of a grasp of the program that you realize, okay, yeah, it is pretty simple. Now, one thing people are very frustrated about with Audacity that is a limitation of the sound card on your computer, not really the program, is that you can only use one input device at a time. You can import all the tracks you want, but you can only record live one thing at a time. So that's a microphone or your computer audio or something like that, but you can't do both. And that's because it's not meant to be a mixer. It's just a recorder and editor. So that's something people get frustrated with, but hey, it is what it is.
There you go. So what's your YouTube channel again?
Free Audacity Tutorials.
There you go. Carey Green, the founder of Podcast Fast Track, and that's podcastfasttrack.com. Thanks for being on the show, man.
Yeah, you're welcome. And if any of your guests would like to receive the first module of my Audacity for Podcasting course, I'd be happy to give that to them for free. So if they want to reach out to me, my email is Carey, Carey, at podcastfasttrack.com.
There you go. So reach out to Carey. Come on, show him some love. He's in Colorado here. He's got a foot of snow out there or more, right?
Yeah, it's over a foot now.
It's actually over a foot now on April 19th, which is normal in Colorado.
Yeah, this is spring in the Rockies. We didn't have a big winter at all, but here it is spring, and it's coming.
Right? That's awesome. So, again, for our show, you can go to podcastengineeringschool.com. We put out shows every week, so listen to this show every week and just become part of the community and just listen. Let this knowledge drip into your brain and you'll become better at engineering everything and producing everything as far as sounding better and spending less time, like Carey was telling about the keyboard shortcuts. So thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next week. And of course, until next time, well, first of all, we're going to go out with our song here, which I might change because of what Dave Jackson said last week. But this is The Distance Between 2 Points. And until next time, you already know what to do. Sound great. See ya.